Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Wednesday, Yom Revi'i. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Steven in New Hampshire, Renee in Indiana, Joe in the Inland Empire, Yehudit in South Carolina, Melissa in Great Neck, Bella in Florida, Sharon in New Jersey. Sai must be really excited about today's daf. He's making it impossible for me to type. Sai, the Talmud cat. Karen in Northern California, Guy in Ohio, Gail in Kansas City, Johnny in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, Paul in the Great Northwest, and Lucy in Minnesota, Bill in Missouri, Nancy in North Carolina, Belle in Texas, Aoife in Florida, Bito in Panama, bienvenido, Debbie in New Jersey, Alan in New York City, Ella in Southern California, and Carolyn in Oklahoma City. Welcome, everybody. Another super colorful daf. Our page today is page 3 here in Tractate Avoda Zara, 27th volume of the Talmud, generally speaking about the prohibition on idolatry. This is a universal prohibition. Not only are Jews prohibited to engage in idolatry, all humans are prohibited to engage in idolatry. Our first Mishna here in chapter 1 is about this idea that you don't do business with idolaters in the days right before or leading up to their idolatrous holiday, because that might give them something to rejoice about, and you might have indirectly caused the idolater to commit idolatry in kind of an extra way. Like he might do some service to his, statue of metal or wood or gold or stone that is a false idol, but because you gave him some kind of a cause to celebrate because you did a business deal with him, it's like you participated in his sin. That's a general principle of our Mishnah, and we've had quite a few, and we're going on some really, really colorful digressions about what will happen at the end of time, right? And at Messianic times, right? So it's kind of the end of history and the Messianic age, and when all the nations of the earth will be judged before the Holy One, blessed be He. And you'll say to them, did you engage in Torah study? And very interesting, right? Also asking the nations, did you learn Torah? Did you learn about who I am and what my Torah says? Why is that not only applicable to the Jews? Because there are commandments that apply to all people, the Noahide commandments, the 7 Noahide commandments. And the first of that is that do not deny God, do not blaspheme. Right? So to know a little bit about God so that you know that you can't commit idolatry and that you must acknowledge the one true God, you need to learn some Torah. Because it's a general context of where we are. Our daf, our page today is page 3, and we are about a third of the way down page 3. And this is similar, this idea that we had at the end of yesterday, that when the Torah was given to the Jewish people, who have not only the 7 commandments that obligate all people, and 613 commandments, total commandments, that Jews are obligated in, and that if they didn't accept the Torah upon themselves, then A, that would have been the end of the Jewish people, and B, that would have been the end of the world. But the Jews did accept the Torah upon themselves. And this is similar to that which Chizkiah says with regard to a different matter. What is the meaning of that which is written, quote, you caused sentence to be heard from heaven, the earth feared and was silent, from Psalm 76 verse 9. We're also talking about the idea that in this kind of trial at the end of time, when God is judging the inhabitants of the world, that who will testify on behalf of the Jewish people that they have kept the commandments. Right? Many Jews don't. Many Jews are not fulfilling their obligations under Torah law. But yet, as a Jewish people, we have kept our relationship with God through Torah alive for thousands of years. And who will testify to that effect? we say that God can't testify on behalf of the Jewish people because he has such a close relationship with the Jewish people. It's like a relative, and relatives are not allowed to testify. So then the idea was suggested yesterday that heaven and earth will testify, but the idea was, well, they can't testify because they're an interested party. If the Jews didn't accept Torah upon themselves, then heaven and earth would be finished. That idea that the universe would come to an end. Okay, continuing this idea, that which is written, you caused sentence to be heard from heaven, the earth feared and was silent. So if the earth feared, why was it silent? And if it was silent, why did it fear? One who is afraid does not stay silent, and one who remains silent thereby demonstrates that he is not afraid. So rather, this is the meaning of the verse. At first, when God came to give the Torah to the Jewish people, the earth feared that they might not accept it, and the earth would be destroyed. And this is alluded to by the phrase, you caused a sentence to be heard. But ultimately, when the Jews accepted the Torah, the earth was silent, satisfied. Consequently, heaven and earth are interested parties, and therefore they cannot testify about the Jewish people's commitment to the Torah. So instead, the Holy One, blessed be He, says to the nations, let the witnesses come from among you and testify that the Jewish people fulfilled the Torah in its entirety. Let Nimrod come and testify about Abraham, that he did not engage in idolatry. Let Lavan come and testify about Jacob, that he is not suspect with regard to robbery, because he didn't steal anything from Lavan when he was taking care of all his animals. Let the wife of Potiphar come and testify about Joseph, that he is not suspect with regard to the sin of adultery. Right? It says in the Torah in Genesis that she tried to seduce him and he wouldn't do it because he was loyal to his master. Let Nebuchadnezzar come and testify about Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah, that they did not prostrate themselves before a graven image, before an idol. Let Darius come and testify about Daniel, that he did not neglect his prayer in Daniel 6. Let Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Naamathite and Eliphaz the Temanite and Elihu the son of Barachel the Buzite, who are the friends of Eov, of Job, come and testify about the Jewish people that they fulfilled the Torah in its entirety. As it is stated, quote, all the nations are gathered together. Let them bring their witnesses that they may be justified. Isaiah 43:9 once again. I.e., the gathered Gentiles will submit testimony on behalf of the Jewish people and demonstrate the Jews' righteousness. This is that whole idea. We have a phrase, Kiddush Hashem, right, which means sanctifying the name of God. Now, there's different ways that you can make a Kiddush Hashem, right? So one way, there was, what was it? There was like a funny video that went around a few years ago from one of those television shows, late night television shows. I think it was Jimmy Fallon's show. And they had like, that one of these like mascots type of characters, like an actor in a big costume. And it was SpongeBob SquarePants, right? And he would fall on the sidewalk and wait, and he couldn't get himself up because of the big costume. And people would just walk by and not help SpongeBob get up off the street. But then there were, some yeshiva boys dressed in black pants, white shirts, kippah like mine. And they stepped right up and helped SpongeBob get up, right? So here's somebody, a group of boys who are visibly Jewish and doing a good deed publicly. That's one way to sanctify God's name. Another way, of course, is people who are, forced, to convert to another religion or to bow to an idol, and they refuse, even though it means that they will be killed. And that's a Kiddush Hashem too. So obviously when, we hope that we can sanctify God's name in this world, we hope that we can generate Kedusha, generate holiness in a positive and uplifting way, like lifting SpongeBob off the sidewalk, and not by making the ultimate sacrifice. It's actually it's considered a gift. If you can make that ultimate sacrifice, it'll stand you well in the next world. But we don't want to have our lives shortened in this world because, as we'll discuss later today, it's only in this world that you can perform mitzvahs, right, and accrue more of those kinds of merit by doing the commandments, by fulfilling our obligations in this world. And once you leave this world, you can't do those commandments. You can do Torah study in heaven because there's the Heavenly Academy, but there's so many other commandments that you can't do, only in this physical world. And so this idea that the nations, the ones who made the Jews suffer, the Spanish Inquisition, right, where they say, convert or die, and people chose to die rather than convert. That was a big Kiddush Hashem. And then, Torquemada and the other people who were running the Inquisition at the end of days will come and say, yeah, we threatened them and they didn't do it. And that would be a merit for the Jewish people, so to speak, and a massive sin and demerit for the inquisitors. Okay, so the Gentiles, these idolaters that we're talking about, say before him, Master of the universe, give us the Torah afresh, and we will perform its commandments. And the Holy One, blessed be he, says to them in response, fools of the world, do you think you can request this? One who takes pains on Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos. Right? Erev Shabbos meaning Friday afternoon. Also Friday evening before, but meaning the day before Shabbos begins, when we spend so much of that day preparing for Shabbos. You come to our house on Friday, Nina is doing an incredible thing. I mean, a normal Shabbos dinner is a lot like a Thanksgiving dinner. It's just like an incredible, beautiful meal that we have every Friday night. And you know what it takes to prepare for Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, there's a lot of preparation that goes into every Shabbos dinner. By analogy, the Messianic age, the end of time, that's Shabbos. That's when the world is going to be filled with the knowledge of the Lord, like water fills the sea. In other words, it'd be totally different than this world. We'll all understand what we were going through in all of history. We'll understand we live in God's world, that God is the ultimate reality. And if you have pursued Torah and righteousness in your life, you'll enjoy that reward then. But you can't just, hop on that train after Moshiach, after the Messiah has come. So that's why they're saying it's like you can eat on Shabbos when you prepare for Shabbos, right? So you can eat, so to speak, enjoy the gifts of the Messianic age if you've prepared for that. So these people who were just doing idolatry all their lives and then want to hop onto the God train, as it were, after Moshiach has come, too late. That's the concept here. Fools of the world, do you think you can request this? One who takes pains on Erev Shabbos will eat on Shabbos, but one who did not take pains on Erev Shabbos, from where will he eat on Shabbos? The opportunity for performing commandments has already passed, and it is now too late to ask to perform them. But even so, I have an easy mitzvah to fulfill, and its name is sukkah. Go and perform it. The sukkah that we dwell in and take our meals in during Sukkot, right? So is God saying that before the Messianic age, hey, I got an easy mitzvah for you, go and eat in a sukkah. You can perform that. It's so easy to do, and you do it with your whole body. It's one of those mitzvahs that you do with your whole body because you're inside the sukkah. And it's just so easy to do. Just go in the sukkah and have a meal. Right? What's the big problem? But it sounds like even in the Messianic age, you will be able to perform that mitzvah. And the Gemara asks, and how can you say so that it is possible to perform a mitzvah after the end of the world? But doesn't Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi say, what is the meaning of that which is written? You shall therefore keep the commandment and the statutes and the ordinances which I command you this day to do them, in Deuteronomy 7:11. Why does Moses say this day? Hasn't he been bringing down the commandments and writing out the Torah? It was all given to Moses at Mount Sinai, not just the Ten Commandments, but the whole Torah. But then he spent all 40 years that the children of Israel were in the wilderness teaching the Torah to the people so that they would understand what the commandments are that are in the Torah, right? And so that was essentially a daf yomi shir like ours every day for 40 years, learning what's going on in the Torah and how to fulfill all these commandments. So what does it mean, the ordinances and statutes that I command you on this day? That must not refer to that calendar day, must have a more mystical meaning. This verse teaches that today, meaning in this world, is the time to do them, to fulfill the commandments. But tomorrow, meaning the world to come, is not the time to do them. Then it's too late. Furthermore, today is the time to do them, but today is not the time to receive one's reward, which is granted in the world to come. An explanation why in this world we see righteous people often suffering and wicked people often prospering. It's because the reward for our righteous deeds in this world comes to us in the next world, not in this world. Otherwise, everybody would do it. It'd be too easy. It would remove free will if it was just a quid pro quo for every good deed. The Gemara explains, but even so, God gave the nations an opportunity to perform a mitzvah. As the Holy One, blessed be He, does not deal tyrannically, beturuneia, with His creations, but rather He wants them to feel that they have been judged fairly. Right? God is not a tyrant. So the Gemara asks, and why does God call the mitzvah of sukkah an easy mitzvah to fulfill? Because performing the mitzvah involves no monetary loss. Which is interesting, involves no monetary loss. I mean, you have to build the sukkah, but okay, having built it, it's not a complicated building. It's not a very expensive building. It's a very flimsy structure that'll stand up to a light wind and fall down in a heavy wind. And that's the idea of it, right? It is a flimsy structure that we live in for a week during the holiday of Sukkot. Some people sleep in it every night. But all observant Jews at least take all their meals in the sukkah, unless it's pouring rain and it becomes unpleasant. But generally, it's nice. It's a very pleasant experience to eat in the shade of the schach, right, the covering of palm branches or other limbs cut from living trees, but no longer attached to the trees, which you can see the stars through it, but provide more shade than sun. These are some of the requirements of the sukkah. And it's pleasant, right? And it's not expensive to perform the sukkah. It's one everyone can do. And here it says, and even the idolaters, and non-Jews can do it, even in the Messianic age. And so God will say that to them in the Messianic age. Go ahead, you can perform sukkah, even now. So immediately, each and every one of these, we're talking about idolaters because we're talking about in Avoda Zara, even if we say non-Jews. So every one of these Gentiles will take materials and go and construct a sukkah on top of his roof. And the Holy One, blessed be He, will set upon them the heat of the sun in the season of Tammuz, i.e. the summer. And each and every one who is sitting in his sukkah will be unable to stand the heat. And he will kick his sukkah and leave, as it is stated, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us, from Psalm 2, verse 3. So the Gemara asks, well, why does God heat the sun over them? But didn't you say that the Holy One, blessed be He, does not deal tyrannically with His creations? And the Gemara answers, this is not considered dealing tyrannically with the Gentiles, because for the Jewish people as well, there are times when the season of Tammuz extends until the festival of Sukkot, and in such years, sitting in the sukkah causes them suffering. You're outdoors, and it's too hot. You're not in a cool place. So the Gemara asks, but doesn't Rava say that one who suffers in the sukkah is exempt from performing the mitzvah of sukkah? And under these circumstances, even a Jew is permitted to leave the sukkah. If so, why are the Gentiles criticized for leaving the sukkah? And the Gemara answers, granted that one is exempt from performing the mitzvah and is permitted to leave his sukkah, but should one kick it? So, this is kind of in passing, but we're learning a lot from this, right? This idea is what our attitude should be toward the mitzvahs. Very often it's like we have these obligations to fulfill the commandments, and we're like, oh yeah, I got to make sure, I got to get to the synagogue and pray every morning. I got to do this, I got to do that, and I just want to be yotze, right? I want to have fulfilled my obligation and get on with my life and get it back to the fun things that I do. And that's not the attitude that we want to have with mitzvahs. We want to feel like when we're doing a mitzvah, wow, it's an opportunity to have some one-on-one time with God while you're doing God's will. It's hard to have that attitude all the time. And sometimes you just have to fulfill it, and you're not involved in the pleasantness of the mitzvah. But whenever possible, you want to be involved in the mitzvah and feel like you're coming closer to God by doing it. And that's the attitude that we're trying to inculcate, right? To nurture that attitude. And sometimes it's impossible to fulfill a mitzvah, like, it's pouring rain, or it's so hot, or it's surrounded by flies, or, something that makes sitting in the sukkah very unpleasant. So on the one hand, if we can stand it and keep it going, then there's actually more merit that is earned. When a mitzvah is difficult, there's a greater reward for fulfilling it. But at a certain point, it just becomes impossible. And then that needs to touch us. It needs to touch our hearts like, oh, I didn't get to fulfill that mitzvah. If you miss morning prayers, so you can make up the Shmona Esrei, the Amidah, the central prayer, in the next prayer service, in the afternoon service. Right? You could say 2 Shmona Esreis separated by some prayer like an Aleinu. But then if you then miss that prayer service, then it's too late. You can't make up the morning Amidah that you missed, right? That opportunity is lost. And I can't say that I have, never missed prayer service, even from the time that I've been an Orthodox Jew. I mean, every now and then it happens. I screw up, or life gets in the way, and something happens. I'm just in a place or in a time or scrambling after something or something, and I can't get it done. And that's human. It happens to all of us. But when that happens, there has to be a little bit of a heartbreak about it, right? I think that's what we're learning here. Okay, and so unlike these idolaters, that they're finally given an opportunity to do a mitzvah, an easy mitzvah, but then it becomes difficult, and they're like, it's not for me anyway. And they kick the sukkah on their way out. The Gemara resumes its narration. So immediately, seeing that, the Holy One, blessed be He, sits and makes sport of those idolaters. He laughs at them. As it is stated, he that sits in heaven makes sport. The Lord has them in derision. Psalm 2, verse 4. Now, with regard to this verse, Rabbi Yitzchak says, there is no making sport for the Holy One, blessed be He, but on that day alone. Right? It's like this idea, I think it was Einstein saying God does not play dice with the universe. Now, he was talking about mathematical probabilities. But there's this idea here that God is very serious, engaged in the very difficult and challenging work of running the world, but he makes time for having, just some enjoyment. And when is that? It's going to be on this section of Judgment Day, apparently, but let's keep reading. We are on page 3b. There are those who teach that Rabbi Yitzchak subsequently said with regard to this matter, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yosei says, in the future, the nations of the world will come and convert. And the Gemara asks, and do we accept them as converts at that time? But isn't it taught in another Baraisa, the court does not accept converts in the days of the Moshiach. Similarly, they did not accept converts either in the days of King David, or in the days of King Solomon, due to the concern that the people wanted to convert for ulterior motives, because the Jewish people were mighty and respected in those days, right? To convert when times are tough for the Jewish people, well, then that the convert is sincere in wanting to connect with God as a Jew and through the commandments of Torah and as part of the Jewish nation and the Jewish community. But if he's converting to Judaism, when the Jews are mighty and awesome and, it's going great for them, a little bit like the description of the Jews at the end of the book of Esther, or in the days of King David or King Solomon, then the Beis Din, right, the rabbinic court, would have to be suspicious that these people are only just getting on the gravy train, so to speak, and that they're not sincere in wanting to convert for spiritual reasons, for faith reasons, right? So likewise, in the days of Moshiach, when God has revealed what the world was all about, and that the Jewish people had always had this special destiny, then it's too late to convert. So rather, Rabbi Yosei means that they become converts who have attached themselves to the Jewish people, and they don tefillin on their heads and tefillin on their arms, and they place tzitzis on their garments and a mezuzah in their doorways. They can't become Jews at that time, but they want to attach themselves to the Jewish people, and so they're doing commandments that only Jews are obligated in. Quite interesting. Rather, now, by the way, that is not recommended. You know, if you're not Jewish, you should not put a mezuzah on your house. You should not be wearing tzitzis. You should not be wrapping tefillin for a number of reasons that are beyond the scope of today's class. But that is not something you do. If you're genuinely engaged in the process of conversion, then you can begin to do those things. When these converts in the end of days, right, after Moshiach has come, when these converts see the war of Gog and Magog, then every convert of this sort will say to Gog and Magog, "For what purpose did you come?" And they will say to him, "We came to fight against the Lord and against his Messiah." As it is stated, "Why are the nations in an uproar? And why do the peoples mutter in vain? The kings of the earth stand up, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his Messiah." That's Psalm 2, verses 1 and 2. And then every one of these converts will tear loose his sign of performance of a mitzvah and leave. Right? Easy come, easy go. They were never committed. As it is stated, Psalm 2, verse 3, "Let us tear their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us." And the Holy One, blessed be he, sits and makes sport, i.e. he laughs and rejoices. As it is stated, "He that sits in heaven makes sport." And the Lord has them in derision, from Psalm 2, verse 4. And Rabbi Yitzchak says, "There is no making sport for the Holy One, blessed be he, but on that day alone." And the Gemara asks, is that so? Is there no other making sport for the Holy One, blessed be he? Does he never get to have fun? But doesn't Rav Yehuda say that Rav says there are 12 hours in the day, right? Every day, daylight of every day. During the first 3, the Holy One, blessed be he, sits and engages in Torah study. And during the second 3 hours, he sits and judges the entire world. Once he sees that the world has rendered itself liable to destruction, he arises from the throne of judgment and sits on the throne of mercy so that the world will not be destroyed. During the third set of 3 hours, right? So 12-hour day, this is our daylight every day. God is learning Torah, then judging the world, finding the world sadly lacking in righteousness. So then he shifts over to the throne of mercy so that the world will be sustained. During the third set of 3 hours of the day, the Holy One, blessed be he, sits and sustains the entire world, from the horns of wild oxen to the eggs of lice. Right? God is busy giving life to the whole world. And during the fourth set of 3 hours of the day, right, the final quarter of the daylight day, during the fourth of those periods, he sits and makes sport with Leviathan, right? Leviathan. This is a very mystical passage. We don't really know what it means, but let's keep reading. He sits and makes sport with the Leviathan. As it is stated from Psalm 104, verse 26, "There is Leviathan, whom you have formed to sport with." So evidently, God makes sport every day, not only on that one day. And Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says in explanation, he makes sport with his creations, just as he sports with the Leviathan. He does not make sport of his creations, but on that day alone, right? In other words, he makes sport with his creations. God enjoys being with us. God enjoys watching us enjoy life. God enjoys seeing us do good things and prosper. There's a note here. Rashi explains that God does not make sport of his creations, right? Does not laugh, mock, scoff at his creations when they sin. Others explain that God does not laugh at them in their difficulties and downfalls, but he does rejoice with them when they are successful. All right, so I love this teaching. There are just things that, there are moments that stand out to me when you just kind of see the humans doing what they do, like the glorious things that humans can do. Depending on what your taste is, like some people just love classical music, right? And when there's a great orchestra playing some incredible symphony by Mozart or Beethoven, one of the greats, and they get it just right? And everyone, that audience is so moved, right? That's one of the glories of the humans. Or maybe it's just like one beautiful deed where no one else was looking and somebody took care of someone else, made it their business to make sure that this sick person who can't cook for his family has the meal that he needs for his family, done anonymously and quietly. And that's the glory of the humans. Or maybe it's that the humans built a spaceship and made it to the moon. Whatever you define as something that's one of the glories of the humans, that's something that God can really enjoy. Man, I'm glad I created the humans. I'm glad. It's wonderful. God relishes these kinds of moments and these kinds of achievements by the humans. And that's making sport with the creatures, making sport with the humans. Making sport of the humans, kind of laughing at them, is like, just look how crazily misguided these people are. But he only laughs at us in that way rather than with us on that day of judgment when we come with our arguments about why we should, be judged favorably, when really the only reason that we can claim to be judged favorably is simply because God loves us. But if it was based on strict justice, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. Rav Acha said to Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, from the day the temple was destroyed, there is no longer any making sport for the Holy One, blessed be He. He can't enjoy the world because the temple was destroyed. And from where do we derive that there is no making sport? If we say that it is from that which is written, and in that day did the Lord, the God of hosts, call to weeping and to lamentation and to baldness and to girding with sackcloth. That's from Isaiah 22:12. That is inconclusive. Perhaps that day alone was called for weeping and lamentation, not all the days after the destruction, in this case of the first temple. Rather, you might suggest that the source, that God can no longer take real pleasure in the world because its level has fallen so low, perhaps it is that which is written, quote, if I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. Let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you. From Psalm 137, verses 5 and 6. But this is also inconclusive, as perhaps there is no forgetting of Jerusalem for God, but in any event, there is still enjoyment. We can hold these two things simultaneously. We can forever mourn for something that is lost, but it doesn't mean that we're going to spend every hour of every day in mourning. We can still take great pleasure in life. And, where would we learn that? From God. So rather, this idea could be derived from the verse, I have long time held my peace, I have been still, and refrained myself. Now will I cry like a travailing woman, gasping and panting at once. Isaiah 42:14. And so the Gemara asks if this is true, that God no longer makes sport, right? No longer has fun with the world. What does he now do during that fourth quarter of the day when he was previously just enjoying the creation? And the Gemara answers, he sits and teaches Torah to school children. As it is stated, whom shall one teach knowledge? And whom shall one make to understand the message? Them that are weaned from the milk, them that are drawn away from the breasts. Isaiah 28:9. And this verse is interpreted in the following manner. To whom does God teach knowledge, and to whom does he make to understand the message? to those who are just weaned from the milk, and to those who are drawn from the breasts, i.e., children who are only recently weaned from nursing, right? Children who they're not just infants who can't learn anything, but the youngest students who are fresh in their journey, and they haven't, been spoiled in any way. And God rejoices in watching them start to learn, right, the lessons of life and the eternal values and what is good and what is right. And the Gemara asks, and initially, before the destruction of the temple, who would teach the school children? And the Gemara answers, if you wish, say that the angel Metatron would teach them. And if you wish, say instead that he would do both this, sport with Leviathan, and that, teach the school children. Whereas after the destruction of the temple in the fourth quarter of the day, he only teaches the school children. And the Gemara asks, and during the 12 hours of the night, what does God do? And the Gemara answers, if you wish, say that the night is similar to the day, and God performs the same activities as in the day, which would make sense when you think about the world is turning, and where it's day here, it's night there, and vice versa. Or if you wish, say that night is similar to the day, God performs the activities as in the day, and if you wish, say instead that he rides on his light cherub and flies in 18,000 worlds. As it is stated, the chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands, from Psalm 68:18. So do not read it as shinan, thousands, rather read it as that which are not, she'enan, since the minimum of thousands, plural, is 2,000 that are not present. So this is saying that the chariots of God are 20,000 minus 2,000, which means that God rides in 18,000 worlds. Very interesting teaching for people that are drawn to this idea of the multiverse, so to speak. Here's a Talmudic proof for that, suggesting that God not only is running our world, but there's another 18,000 or 17,999 worlds that God is very busy sustaining, judging, running, steering, etc. And it talks about chariots, which is interesting. And so this idea is a chariot is not just a conveyance for fighting war, but a chariot is also some kind of a vehicle that in the mystical realm is something that you can ride from one world to another. Right? So God can ride his chariots from different mystical worlds that God has created and inhabits. And there's this idea of Merkava. Merkava means chariot. Merkava mysticism, the idea that there are times when humans get a glimpse into these upper worlds, and we describe that as sort of getting a ride on the heavenly chariot for some amount of time. And if you wish, say instead that God in that fourth quarter or in that night sits and listens to the songs from the mouths of the angelic creatures. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his loving kindness, and in the night his song shall be with me. From Psalm 42, verse 9. Rabbi Levi says, anyone who interrupts the study of words of Torah to occupy himself with mundane matters will be fed with the coals of the broom tree. As it is stated, they pluck saltwort from wormwood, and the roots of the broom are their food. Job 30, verse 4. Reish Lakish says, with regard to anyone who occupies himself with Torah at night, the Holy One, blessed be he, extends a thread of kindness over him by day. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his kindness, and in the night his song shall be with me, from Psalm 42. The verse is understood as follows. What is the reason that by day the Lord will command his kindness to extend over him? It is due to the fact that in the night his song is with me, i.e. he occupies himself at night with Torah, which is referred to as a song. There are those who say that this is what Reish Lakish says with regard to anyone who occupies himself with Torah in this world, which is comparable to night. The Holy One, blessed be he, extends a thread of kindness over him in the world to come, which is comparable to the day. As it is stated, by day the Lord will command his kindness, and in the night his song shall be with me. And the Gemara continues discussing the importance of Torah study. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, what is the meaning of that which is written? and makes people as the fish of the sea, as the creeping things that have no ruler over them, from Habakkuk 1:14. Why are people compared to the fish of the sea? This serves to say to you, just as with regard to the fish of the sea, once they arise onto dry land, they die immediately. So too with regard to people. Once they separate themselves from studying words of Torah, and Torah is often likened to water, and from performing the mitzvahs, the commandments, they die immediately. Alternatively, just as with regard to the fish of the sea, once the sun is heated over them, they die immediately. So too with regard to people, once the sun is heated over them, they die immediately. The immediately is interesting, that this idea that a Jew untethered from Torah, has really lost, his umbilical cord or his lifeline, let's say. A Jew needs to be tethered to Torah because that is the life that God has given us, the type of life that God has called us to lead. And when a Jew turns his back on Torah, it's like he's just giving up his lifeline. He leaves himself so vulnerable in this world. The Gemara clarifies, if you wish, say that this applies in this world, and if you wish, say instead that it applies in the world to come. So if you wish, say that it applies in this world in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Hanina. As Rabbi Hanina says, all occurrences that befall man are in the hands of heaven, except for colds, like getting a cold, obstacles from which one is able to protect himself. As it is stated, colds and snares are on the path of the crooked. He who guards his soul shall keep far from them. And this indicates that cold and conversely heat are forms of harm from which one must protect himself, which teaches that being exposed to excessive heat can cause death. So interesting, colds, the idea of being sick with a cold, but the idea that you get that because you're exposed to the cold, and likewise extreme heat, that's avoidable, right? I mean, you shouldn't be shivering. You don't put yourself in that position. Make sure you have a coat. Make sure that you protect yourself from a place where you're going to come to be so cold. And likewise, protect yourself from being exposed in the heat and not have, some form of shade available to you. And if you wish, say instead that this is referring to the world to come. In accordance with the statement of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, as Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, there is no Gehenna in the world to come. Rather, the Holy One, blessed be He, will remove the sun from its sheath, where it is situated during these times, and heats that world with it. The wicked will be punished by it and consumed by the heat, but the righteous will be healed by it. The wicked will be punished by it, as it is written. Now we're on page 4a. For behold, the day comes, it burns as a furnace, and all the proud and all the work and all who work wickedness shall be stubble. And the day that comes shall set them ablaze, and the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. Malachi 3:19. And this verse is interpreted as follows: neither a root shall remain for them in this world, nor will a branch grow for them in the world to come. And this teaches that the sun itself will burn and consume the wicked in the future, right? That in the world to come, there'll be some kind of a separation between the righteous who have bliss in the world to come, and the wicked that will not be enjoying bliss in that time. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. And the righteous shall be healed by it, as it is written in the next verse. But to you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in its wings. Malachi 3:20. And moreover, not only will the righteous be healed by it, but they will even be rejuvenated by it, as it is stated in the continuation of that verse, and you shall go forth and leap as calves of the stall. Alternatively, just as in the case of the fish of the sea, any fish that is bigger than another swallows the other, so too in the case of people, were it not for the fear of the government, anyone who is bigger than another would swallow the other. And this is as we learned in that Mishna in Pirkei Avos 3:2, that Rabbi Hanina, the deputy high priest, says one should pray for the welfare of the government, as were it not for the fear of the government, every man would swallow his neighbor alive. Right? That's this idea that people are just drawn to get their way, and people who are stronger will get their way more often because they will impose themselves physically on the weak. That's why we have to have systems of government that protect the weak and protect people from other ruthless people, and that is righteousness. And that's why it's a commandment in the Noahide commandments to establish courts of law. That's a commandment that all humans are obligated on, right? To have legal systems in place that protect the rights, of the downtrodden, of the weak, of the widow, of the orphan, of the minority and a majority community, right? That you need to protect people from having, others practice might makes right upon them, right? And so you have to have such a system, and then once you've created such a system, you have to pray that the system holds. And that's why we say we pray for the welfare of the government in a very positive way. I'm reminded of that, was it Ben Franklin who says, right? What was the exact quote? I'm sure people know what I'm talking about, that, we were given, that our founding fathers created, a democratic republic. And he says, congratulations, you've got this kind of government, this beautiful experiment in world history that hadn't existed before. You've got a republic if you can keep it, right? If you can keep it, if you can fight for the great American experiment and improve it and, root out the stuff that's not working and keep evolving and making the system work that protects the rights of the individual and of the weak and creates a setting where we can all flourish. And God knows it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than the tyrannies which preceded the American system. And now we have democratic republics around the world, right? So the American experiment is one that has shown the way to so many nations around the world. Okay, just a couple of comments. One is from Sharon. My husband hates eating outside, so he never enjoys a meal in the sukkah. If someone finds eating in the sukkah a discomfort, how does that impact the performance of a mitzvah that is supposed to be pleasant? Right, and it seems that what the sages teach right here is that there's some kind of a line, right, where the discomfort in the beginning, having more discomfort earns you more merit while performing that mitzvah. But if you cross over some kind of a line, we don't know exactly where it is, but where it becomes so unpleasant, then you're excused from performing that mitzvah, because you should not be performing a mitzvah that is intended to be pleasant and which causes only discomfort. It's going to create the wrong kind of association with the Torah, with the commandments, with that holiday, and that's why we're excused from it. And Bill says, I'm hardly going to gainsay the sages, but I'll say that I at least have regularly felt that I was on the receiving end of God's sense of humor. Of course, it's always to my good in the long term, naturally, so I suppose one could say that the laughter of God now is good-natured. But then again, surely the merciful one is never, even in judgment, mean-spirited in jest. No, he's not. Except possibly on that, one period of the one day at the end of history, when these people come and, offer ridiculous arguments about why they were so wicked during their lifetimes. But otherwise, no, God rejoices with us. God does have a sense of humor. And it's likened elsewhere in the Talmud where, a man walks in, he sees his toddler son playing with a house of sticks. And when the door opens, a breeze blows in and the house of sticks falls over. And the poor toddler is crying, sobbing that his little toy house is broken. And the father chuckles, not because, he's enjoying the pain of his son who's crying over the broken toy house, but because he knows that this son has such a bright life ahead of him and that he will soon realize that the toy house is not what life is all about, but he has much greater, structures and commandments and tasks and achievements ahead of him in his life. And so too, sometimes, we have something terrible happen to us, and only later do we realize, well, that was the best thing for us. That door that slammed in our face was actually the door that opened another path in life. And we're so grateful in retrospect, even though we couldn't see it then. That's what I've got for us today. And with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Thursday, at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a good night.